In today's episode, we have one of the most successful mining executives and CEO of one of the more notorious mining stocks, that's First Majestic Silver on the New York Stock Exchange. And Keith, one of the big, I would say, influencers, if you could call Keith that, right? Because also, highly sought after and long-standing successful executive. We're going to be talking about silver, gold, how the silver market is influenced by these socioeconomic, geopolitical environments, how inflation influences it moving forward. And we're going to be talking a bit about silver stocks as well. So make sure you hit the like button on this video. We will link the First Majestic website right there down below in the comments. Comment down below, go Silver, go, right there down below. And Keith, it's good to see you.
Yeah, Jake, it's great seeing you as well. It's been some time.
Yeah. I was thinking yesterday, just to times when we talked and times when I talked to Rick, and thinking about the things that you guys have said. And one of them is explaining how, especially silver particularly, it's like it always breaks out during so much confusion in the world. And right now, the Federal Reserve just said inflation's 7.5%, which I'm sure that might have been a little surprising to. I know it was to me. I didn't expect them to say such big numbers. Then we see this Russia war type of stuff breaking out. What is your take on this rather confusing and it seems like high speed? Something just keeps happening. New inflation number. Then Germany's producer price index was like 25%, the highest since 1949. Then the Russia stuff happens. Silver skyrockets. Then it goes right down right after the Russia incident. But what do you make of all of it?
Well, geopolitically, obviously, the world is in quite a unusual. I don't actually remember, so much, issues going around the world. The world seems to be so unstable right now. It's just, you look at Latin America, United States, Canada, now Eastern Europe, Asia. There's messes all over the place. No wonder why the central banks have been buying so much gold over the last year or two. Obviously, they know there's something up, and this big reset or whatever is planned by these super elite. Maybe this whole Russian invasion was part of the plan. Who knows? They seem to be leaving Putin alone, despite the threats that they were, suggesting prior to this invasion. Now that he's invaded, they're all backing off and saying, "Okay, well, let's give it a month and see what happens." And so it's pretty strange. You just kind of wonder whether this is all just part of the whole game that all these politicians are playing.
Yeah, I just wonder where the heck does the game go next? Now Hillary Clinton was on TV today saying we need to cyber attack them, and that's the last thing. I don't want a war, but I certainly don't want a cyber war. That does not sound good. And I guess it just brings up, you've seen Canadian bank freezes, all these types of things. And it just kind of brings back to the original idea of leaving the financial system, i.e. having real money, having silver. What do you make of all that between cyber war, freezing banks, high inflation going off the charts? How does that tie back into silver?
Well, it's a huge concern, and it's the Canadian government came out and said the same thing today. Prepare a message to the corporations within Canada. Prepare yourself for a cyber attack from
Wow.
Russia. Whether this is a false flag, who knows? But I read something just about a month ago that once this whole COVID thing kind of goes sideways and ends finally, and we can get back to some normality in our lives, that there's some plan that they're going to shut down. The governments are going to shut down the worldwide grid for 2 or 3 days, blaming it on sunspots, and basically turn all the electricity off. God, hopefully that doesn't happen. But there's some very odd things going on around the world right now, and my daughter just asked. One of my daughters asked me yesterday, "Is her money safe in the bank accounts in her bank?" And I can't answer that question. I don't know. I try to be optimistic, and I am, an optimist, and hence, I'm able to build companies and so on. And I build them because I think I'm adding value and think I'm, bringing something to the human race. And I look at, what our staff has created. One of the, most respected silver companies on the planet, and from scratch, 19 years in, and you just kind of wonder, what's really going on out there, when you see these kinds of things, and it creates a huge amount of concern for me. And the direction that we're going as a human race is not particularly pleasing.
I guess the one good thing is First Majestic in a grid freeze, or as the Canadian government you said warned about cyber financial stuff. At least you guys have a lot of silver in the ground still. They can't really freeze that. But
Mm.
it's something I've been worrying about a lot. So did the Canadian government put out a media release, or did agencies contact big companies like yours, or how did that work?
No, it's a press release that came out this morning. I read it when I woke up this morning, and it's very much along the same lines as this whole cyber attack, and sunspots, whether it's sunspots, whether it's the Russians or the Chinese, or maybe it's the Americans doing it themselves. Who knows? But and that's one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of Bitcoin, and because you lose electricity, you lose the internet, your Bitcoin's worth nothing, and at least gold and silver, physical metal. That's where it's at, and I continually tell people, they have to have some of their money, some of their net worth in physical metal, whether it's silver or gold. Silver is in small quantities; it's easy to carry around. God forbid if we actually need to use it to go buy something, but if it does get that bad, which you kind of wonder, who would have predicted what the last 2 years? 10 years ago, you would have never predicted that. Would you ever predicted the Canadian government did what they did? Is this going to repeat itself in other countries around the world? Canada doesn't generally be the leader. Canada is normally a follower, and usually the United States is the leader. For Canada to do something that they've done like they've done in the last couple of weeks, I'm not sure what that means for our future, but I can't see it being very good.
So, you said that you're an optimist in that for the most part, you're really focusing on what you can control, which is, you said you started First Majestic Silver 19 years ago because you saw an opportunity there. Now, if you rewind to when you first started First Majestic, did you start it purely off of the projected supply demand fundamentals with the EV movement and renewables? Did you do it because you thought that it was important to have real money and in essence leave the financial system? What was the motivation now compared to when you're looking at the way the world is moving currently?
Yeah, I put together, one of the largest copper companies, in the early 90s, 92, 93. And I left that company in 2000, and I dabbled around in the internet market and watch crash, NASDAQ, dropped 80% over a period of, 3 years from 2000, into 2003, which really lit up the resource sector. And that was when gold was, bottoming out in 2001, 2002 at $250 an ounce, and silver was down at $5 an ounce. And I wanted to get back into the mining sector, and then I looked around and I thought about putting a gold company together, but there was just so many gold companies around, and I'm a big believer in gold. I think everyone should have gold, but coming from a copper company, I'm really a supply demand fundamentalist, and when I started looking at silver, I just was blown away by the supply demand story. We didn't have EVs back then. We didn't have solar panels back then, for the most part, anyways. But I looked at cell phones. I thought cell phones was really the place. I remember when the first cell phone from Motorola came out. That's how old I am. So, I remember black and white TVs, color televisions, fax machines. I witnessed all this stuff coming into being. This technology, I want to ride the technology wave because I'm a huge believer in technology and the advances that technology and the benefits technology brings to the human race. And I just thought silver was a really good way to play the technology race. And since then, we've seen now two big markets: the EV market, which is taking up over 10% of world supply, approaching actually likely 20% this year, maybe next year. But we're producing as an industry 800 million ounces of silver a year in 2019, which is the last numbers I saw, because there wasn't any official numbers that came out in 2020, as far as I know. But we consumed 65 million ounces of silver in 2019, spread over 6 million electric cars. So you do the math, and I don't know what the 2021 numbers are. I'm dying to see them. But I saw an article out of an analyst in London about a month ago, and he's predicting that the solar panel industry is going to consume 140 million ounces of silver in 2022. Wow. I don't know what the electric car industry is going to consume, but you've got two brand new buyers of silver that are now consuming almost 30% of the world's supply of silver. And these buyers didn't exist a decade ago.
Wow. Yes, some of that math is crazy. I was just doing math on the lithium market actually yesterday. Known global reserves versus like approximately 8 kilograms in one battery, and I was just like toying around with the math. How many vehicles are there in the US? How many are in China? How many are in the world? And then doing the math based off of where governments are making the mandates. And I do this math and I go, has anyone that is proposing these ideas done this math? And I think maybe Elon Musk might be the only one, because he got in trouble for, the supposed coup d'etat in Bolivia to try to control lithium. And he also has they have a patent for lithium extraction. And I'm like doing the math and I'm like, geez, like the amount that is needed for the electric cars based off of these, pretty much all these big governments, whether it's EU, Canada, a lot, Gavin Newsom, they're pretty much all by like 2030. Well, there's 280 million cars just in the United States. There's another 280 million in China. There's over 1.5 billion cars in the world. And they say like they're all going to be electric by 2030, 2040. And I'm doing the math on lithium. I'm like I almost felt like a smart ass in the back of the class. Like, hey, has anyone ever done this math before? And when you're saying that about silver, it's amazing because it's the exact same thing. That's why I was always so much more interested in gold versus silver, because of these supply demand things. For someone like me who's not a rocket scientist, I can just look at the math and be like, this doesn't make much sense. And
that's why I say to people, we need $10 copper prices, we need $100 silver prices, because the miners need the incentive to make the investment. And the numbers that when during the lockdowns, I was doing research as well, and there's about 95 million automobiles produced every year. 2020 was obviously a low number, but on average over the last decade, that's approximately how many cars get produced each year. And there was only 6 million cars. 6 million of the 95 million were electric cars.
Wow.
Yeah. So if governments want to replace fuel combustion cars by 2030 or 2040, that's a big change. And you now see Audi and Volkswagen and BMW and of course the U.S. manufacturers as well. We're seeing more and more automobile companies producing electric cars. So that 6 million is probably a much bigger number, because that's a bit of an old number. But nevertheless, that's a ton of silver. And if it's about a kilo of silver per electric car. Okay. You'll never get that number out of the auto industry, because they won't tell you. They're paranoid about telling you, because they don't want anyone to know how much metal they're consuming. But to get a silver mine producing, it's a minimum of 10 years. So, and that's if everything goes really smoothly. So you drill a hole and you discover economic silver. You're going to drill it out over a period of 4 to 5 years to make sure there's enough silver there. At the same time, you'll be doing permitting, talking with the governments, trying to, get this thing done. Then you got to finance the darn thing. and then you're going to construct it. And constructing, depending on the size, is going to take anywhere between 3 to 5 years. So from first discovery, it's a minimum of 10 years. In the case of Ermitaño, which is First Majestic's latest producing mine, it just came on stream in November. That was 6 years from discovery, but we had a mill already built because it's only 4 kilometers away from our mill. So that was, thank goodness we had that mill there when we made that discovery. But if we didn't have the mill, we would now be in construction, and it would be another couple of years, so 8 to 10 years. But a lot of mines, and that's Mexico. Mexico tends to be a bit of an easier jurisdiction. But if it's in Canada or the United States, you're talking 15, 20 years. And sometimes if you're in Alaska, forget it, you'll probably never get a permit. So, you could find a great asset, great ore body in Alaska, and 50 years from now, if you're lucky, you might get a permit. So it's, the miners won't spend the money to supply the industry with the amount of copper and silver that the industries need to follow the Green New Deal. It's impossible.
Yeah, pretty much all of these countries have set California signed it into law by 2030. So when you're saying 95 million cars produced a year, I mean, they're essentially saying in the next 10 to 20 years, every one of those has to be electric. And I guess that's really the thesis behind it as a serious silver investor like yourself, right? And so then I wonder, well, we know about the price manipulation. One of the weird things about silver in that regard is you have this unbelievable projected demand that similar to the lithium market. If you actually do the math, it's like you're going to need you're going to have triple digit silver just to even get close to meeting any of these demands, which still would be impossible. And then to couple that, you don't have a natural price environment due to them, in this fiat system, they can just issue the debt and do unlimited sell orders. So then it gets distorted even more. So it kind of creates like a perfect storm, right? Like, because there's so much industrial demand from it, but when the price is manipulated, it can be more frustrating in the short term, but in the long term, doesn't that make it more of a perfect storm?
Oh, for sure. At some point, it'll break, right? If you're talking about the 95 million cars, and I mentioned earlier, about 6 million cars consume 65 million ounces of silver in 2019. So I could easily do the math, but people can do it themselves. But that works out to an awful lot of silver, more than we're producing probably. And where does that break? At some point, the manipulators who banged the heck out of the metal yesterday, that was one of the most amazing days I've ever seen. Where we had $100 move in gold up and down, and silver, went through 25.50 and then broke through 24. And today it's actually a gain below 24. It's just, that doesn't happen in a natural market. So, these people that are playing this game have no clue about really the fundamentals of the physical demand in the market. These are guys in high towers on Bay Street just trading numbers on a computer screen. And these markets tend to be quite illiquid. They're easy to move around. The entire silver market, is you do the math, 850 million ounces are produced a year times, $25 or $24. That's just, Apple could buy the entire silver industry probably with pocket change. But yet we trade 1 billion ounces a day in the paper markets, and we only produce 850 million ounces a year, or 800 million ounces a year. So that's a lot of leverage in a market, and the paper market has control over pricing, which is itself it shouldn't be. The miners and industry should be involved in pricing, based on true supply demand fundamentals. We see that in the uranium market. We see it in the oil market. These markets are much more legitimate markets than the precious metals markets.
Yeah, thinking about that math, 95 million cars annually. You said about six million,
65 million.
65 million was how much?
Over 6 million cars. Yeah.
Yep, that comes
Yeah.
out to about 65 million ounces.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So you do the math on that. If every electric car in the world, I mean, then you basically have already got the entire annual supply of silver. And I look, it's the same thing that happened to me when I'd never done the math like that on lithium. And you look at silver, that's one minute area that it's presently used for would take up the whole supply. And it makes me go, they're all saying we're going to this huge push towards electrification of the world, but it seems like every commodity in the world is headed for like price breaking numbers because no one's done the math on how much of these commodities are going to be needed to supply these types of demands and mandates and this general vision that they want to take it, right?
Yeah, and in a world where governments don't want any extractive industry. So look at what the U.S. did with the oil pipelines. They shut them down. So and mining sector is looked at as a dirty industry, and there's lots of pressure on the mining sector, and it's harder and harder to get permits. It's harder and harder to even explore for metal. Getting a drill rig permitted is in itself a challenge. So if you've got higher demand and less supply, and governments don't want to mine in their backyard, where's this metal going to come from? And I said, throughout the last decade, we're going to end up mining waste dumps. All those televisions and refrigerators and stoves and microwave ovens that we buried in landfills around the planet. If governments don't let the miners go and actually do mining, where are we going to get the metal? We're going to have to go into dumps. And this cell phone here, this is an Apple 10, and it's probably got $5 worth of silver in it. But it's uneconomic to recycle it because these high tech companies are so good at embedding this metal into these circuit boards that you can't get it out. You can burn it out, but then you create too much pollution. And the Chinese have shut down a bunch of smelters that used to do that work. They used to be a huge importer of computer waste, but due to their cleanup of their air and so on, they've been shutting down smelters. So you can't even ship computer waste to China anymore. So all this computer waste is now accumulating on surface from North America and Europe, and there's no home to send all this computer waste to because none of the smelters are willing to take it because the amount of pollution it creates. So we don't have the technology to get the metal out of these devices that we've created, and it all comes down to price. If silver was $100 an ounce, then maybe it would be economic to recycle silver and copper out of computers, out of cell phones. But right now they're just thrown away because we have nothing to do with them.
Is there a point at which, since there's so much industry demand for silver and you just laid the math out, whether it's electric car companies or it's all these various solar panels and all the various big tech phones and whatnot, is there a point at which there's such a constraint on the market that they essentially, for lack of better terms, demand that the price rises to incentivize new mining because they need the price higher because the availability is so short? I mean,
it's the banks have control over these markets, right? So the banks will, if they wake up one day and say, hey, by the way, we're wrong in our thesis, then things change. The press, there's a announcement, you probably saw it. It came out 4 to 6 weeks ago, whereby Bank of America is apparently short 800 million ounces of silver. Did you happen to see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's shocking. And I can't even imagine a bank taking a short position like that. It sounds so like, why would a bank take that much risk? And silver was below, it was at least $2 or $3 below where it's currently trading at. So the loss on that trade right now is quite astronomical. It's probably in the billions of dollars. So, who maybe it was them, silver broke through 25.50 yesterday, and these guys in New York are panicking, and who knows, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but if you're short that much of anything, and then it's going against you, wouldn't you try to knock it down, whether it's a stock or whether it's anything? It doesn't matter what it is. You're gonna because it's you're trying to protect your investment. You're trying to protect your book, and yet the regulators just sit aside and let these kinds of games happen. But eventually, I think industry is going to crack the whole thing open. And I think that Elon Musk, being the guy he is, we've already seen him dealt his hand. He's played in the lithium space. He's now played in the nickel space. I personally believe that within probably a decade, that the big high tech companies will likely own several key mines around the world, and they'll be dealing with their own supply, and they'll be right outside of the COMEX. They won't even be trading in the COMEX market. They'll just have their supply. And what that ultimately is going to do is that'll break the COMEX, because what makes the whole banking trade or the COMEX work is there is physical metal in the system. So they could leverage that physical metal, and they kind of know when it's going to come in. They kind of have a feel for what's being produced, and they run the math, and they could run their risks on their positions and how leverage they could get, and so on and so forth. But if you take the physical metal out of the system, which I think will ultimately happen because the high tech companies will own the metal through their own production because they'll own the mines, the entire COMEX collapses because it just is a paper market at that point, and no one cares about it because all the supply is being consumed by industry and they've got direct supply.
Wow, that's interesting. Then what would happen?
Well, it'd be great for the miners because I think all of a sudden the big hedge funds and pension funds around the world will try to front run the tech companies, and because the second a tech company goes in and buys a mining company, and can you imagine Tesla taking out First Majestic? That would light up the world. That would every mining stock on the planet would probably go up 50 to 100% just because people would think, okay, well, who's going to be the next buyer?
It sounds a little
pure speculation, Jake, but
well, it's pretty interesting. It sounds like on first take a little out there, but then once you actually look at the math and everything that we talked about,
yeah,
you
like,
start to go just rationally deducing logic out of a linear format. You go, well, it seems like it will have to happen at some point. They're going to need to do things like that, right?
yeah. Well, why give all that money to the banks? Like the miners are giving money up to the banks. The tech companies that are consumers are giving money up to the banks. So if you're a high tech company that cares about margins, wouldn't you try to own the entire stream? Like for a mining company, the best thing you would own, like and all the big majors, all the big conglomerates, they own a smelter, they own a refinery, and some even own mints in a couple of cases, and they own the entire supply chain from the time it gets produced to the end consumer. And if you're a high tech company, why wouldn't you want to do the same?
Do you think that someone like Elon is thinking about that? Like I'm trying to imagine if you met him and you said all that to him, what he would say.
Well, he obviously knows there's an issue with nickel and lithium,
Yeah.
but he hasn't figured out the silver story because the silver story is as critical as any metal, as you pointed out earlier.
So I don't know if exit strategy is the right word, but do you think that when you're looking down the line, like way down the line at First Majestic, are you expecting one day when you are retiring that it ends with one of these big companies buying you guys, or what?
Yeah, you can't ever plan for, at least in my opinion, an exit strategy. Like I've been in the mining sector for 35 years, and I've never had a company bought from out from underneath me.
Oh.
Yeah, but I know other people that have had 2 or 3 companies bought out from underneath them. So yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say. At our size, there's not that many companies out there that could buy us. Other than a high tech company, another mining company would likely not take us out because we're just too big. But but for an apple, it's pocket change.
That's going to be interesting to watch what happens. It's like I was just thinking there's so many different crises that are occurring or starting to occur, all different types of things. And I was thinking like the miscalculation of commodities is going to be a serious crisis once they realize like how much is needed. What's going to happen?
Yeah. Well, according to what's his name, the Davos guy, own nothing
Klaus
and be
Schwab?
happy. Yeah, Charles. Yeah, Charles.
Yeah, well, you're going to sell, Klaus Schwab, he'll take over
Yeah.
First Majestic Silver. He'll,
Yeah.
he'll be the C. I'll be interviewing him. So, First Majestic, Mexico is like one of the only sane countries left. Mexico, in a lot of ways, I mean, no offense to Canada, but I'd be in Mexico before Canada myself, from a living perspective. It's stayed relatively sane, and a relatively stable, especially political environment. I mean, more so than someone would ordinarily think. It seems like it's worked out quite well. What's going on? Have you been pleased with all of that, first of all? And what's the latest updates on First Majestic?
Well, Mexico's not what it was 19 years ago. It's it is quite a bit different. Security is always a bit of a concern. The cartels and the corruption that's present within Mexico is elevated compared to what it was when we first put the business together. It's manageable, and look, it's a great place to be. Good people, hardworking people. Workforces are available. If you need a few hundred people, they're there, and at a reasonable cost. Uh, Food's good, the weather's good. We have a mine in Nevada we just bought last year in Jarrett Canyon. It's called, as many of your listeners probably know, but we're learning how to mine in snow.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because up in Elko, Nevada, it actually gets quite cold in the winter and it does snow, and we've never had a mine in that kind of environment before, and we've always been quite blessed with having mines in warm climates, and being able to operate 365 days a year, and rarely have any freezing. We've had odd events, but not as regular as we do at Jarrett Canyon. So it's a learning curve. But no, I think we're looking at, on M&A front. If something came up that was interesting for us in Mexico, we would definitely still look at it, despite some of the challenges.
You'll definitely want to keep taking your business trips to Mexico over the snow. I love
Yeah,
Mexico. I
good,
really,
just to warm up.
yeah. So, what's the latest First Majestic? I know you're always. I know your goal is to be, if not the one of the, you know, biggest mining companies out there, even outside of the silver space. I know where your head's at and your ambitions at. So, how's everything going, and where's your head at?
Yeah, well, look, we had a record 2021 production year. Costs are a little, there's some inflation, so we are dealing with some issues there, and we're still adopting new technologies and looking for ways to grind down costs, and that's just an ongoing effort, and will continue to be that way. But 2022 is going to be another record year. We're expecting about a 30% growth year over year, which is pretty
Wow.
substantial. And in 2023, 2024 is looking really good. We produced somewhere around 24 million ounces of silver equivalent in 2021. That number is going to reach around 27, 28 million ounces in 2022. And by 2024, we're expecting to break through 50 million silver equivalent ounces.
What's your goal? What's like your big ambition?
Well, that's on paper. That's our budget. So it's I don't throw that out lightly. These are numbers that we're actually shooting to accomplish.
What's like your big ambition? Like your big 10, I don't know, we call it 10-year, 20-year vision or career vision with where to take it with
You know,
First
I think
Majestic?
50 million ounces is a nice target. You know, when I put together the company, you know, originally my goal was to get to 10 million ounces.
Oh wow.
We got there within 10 years, and now we're 19 years in, and we're at, you know, heading towards 27, 28 million. It's exciting. You know, we want to be the largest silver producer in the world out of the primary silver mines, anyways, and you know, that's a big task. We're gonna probably need to make a couple other strategic moves to accomplish that, and we're always working to you know, achieve that.
Um, I'd seen your someone peeking in a couple times, so I don't want to
Oh, really?
take up too much of your time, but I wanted to
Including my
ask you
birthday.
if you've got another minute.
Yep.
I wanted to ask you, so mining companies are it's interesting because there's obviously so many commodities and things that can be mined, and then in the publicly traded markets, you know, then there's so many companies that come about from it and so many people that try it. And you know, a lot of people never produce 1 ounce, you know, in their whole career, you know, let alone even having a goal of producing 10 million. Or a lot of people, they say their goal, but they say it in terms of reserves, not in terms of the amount of mined ounces.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're in this, I mean, let alone to even have the goal to produce 10 million ounces is a lot, but then achieve that, go 27, 28 million. Why do you think that you've been able to be so successful at doing this?
Well, first off, it's you know, having a vision, of course, and you know, it all starts there, and then having good people, you know, around the business, and you know, we've been blessed by having some very strong people, you know, as part of my team, and you know, we're you know, adding talent all the time as we grow the business, and you know, that's one of the biggest challenges is just continually adding new talent, and you know, the company's considerably larger than it was a decade ago, and you know, it wouldn't have grown as it has without the people involved. So you know, it's just motivating, getting people to work all towards the same direction, and it's amazing, you know, how you know, you get a couple hundred people all working together on the same task. You know, it's amazing what can be accomplished, and you know, I've been successful in being able to you know, motivate people in order to work together, because it's all a team effort always.
Was it weird looking back and seeing you guys just produce 25, 26 million and thinking that your guys' original goal was to your ultimate big huge goal, which was a big huge goal, was to get to 10 million and be like, oh wow, we sort of shot past that. Like, was it weird to look at that?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. It's. I remember in 2004 we bought our
Just you
first
guys have a
mine.
big company. That's you know.
Yeah, oh, you know, over 6,000 employees, and so no, look, in 2004 we bought our first mine in January, and we were in modest production by October that year. So we rebuilt the mill, and so on and so forth. We produced 25,000 ounces of silver in our first year. And
Wow.
25,000 ounces of silver, like, that's nothing,
That's
right?
crazy.
But you know, that was a big deal, you know, and it got a lot of people excited, and I was able to raise a substantial amount of money over the following couple of years in order to, you know, make the strategic M&A moves that we did to be able to build a portfolio. And I was lucky to have a couple real key professionals, you know, at my side, looking at assets and, you know, going through Rolodexes, and just, you know, picking and choosing. And you know, every move we made didn't work, but we made a lot of moves, and a lot of right moves, and we bought some great assets, and you know, within a very short period of time, we started producing, you know, 4 or 5 million ounces a year, which just kind of built upon itself, and breaking through 10 million ounces was obviously a huge milestone.
Within the sector, one of the obviously most successful and legendary investors is Eric Sprott, you know, multi-billionaire natural resource investor. I'm not sure if it's his largest investment in any company or if it's just his largest investment in a silver company. But first of all, you can correct me on that.
No,
Um, in
it's his
any company,
largest.
period.
That's right. Mhm.
Okay, so Eric
Mining company.
Sprott's mining, yeah, correct. In any mining company that Eric Sprott is invested in, the largest is First Majestic. Um, Obviously, I imagine that it was probably pretty cool. But what I was thinking about is one of my friends was together with him on a fishing trip pretty recently, and he said, and I said, "Well, what'd you guys talk about?" And he said, "Well, he only wanted to talk about silver." I was like, "Did you ask him anything else?" Yeah, like I tried to. Some other, he's just like, "No, he just wanted to talk about silver."
Yeah, no, that's definitely Eric. And I have him on the phone, every once in a while, and yeah, no, he's promoting me all the time. So, I'm the last guy he needs to promote, but he comes up with the most fascinating tidbits of information that I don't get from anyone else except him. So it's pretty good.
And you
Yeah,
guys are both.
we've got a great relationship, and yeah, it's great to have him on board. And we're co-invested in a couple of companies as well, and have been for 20 years.
And so I assume, without needing to say, you guys are both in the triple digit silver camp.
Hmm. Despite the fact I coined the phrase. So.
All right. Well, we can get the lawyers to draft one up for you. Okay.
It's
So
okay. More people that say it, the better, because eventually everyone will start believing in it. Maybe it'll actually happen.
yeah, maybe we'll do it that way. All right. So everyone comment down below, triple digit silver. We're going to link First Majestic website. Catch them on the major stock exchanges. We'll link Keith's Twitter and First Majestic Twitter and all that type of stuff like that too. Keith, is there anything else that I had you for a while, so I apologize. I know you're already late for a haircut, and I don't look like you're in your office, and some people
I
were.
think I'm going to have to phone them to reschedule. But I leave tomorrow, and we got the conference coming up next week. So I was hoping to look a little bit better for the conference, but maybe that's not going to happen.
So any last thing that you that I missed, or anything that First Majestic that I missed, or anything you
Yeah,
want to
no,
leave
look,
me with?
it's I think that the wind behind our sails is definitely there. The governments seem to want to continually print paper, which is great for gold, and I guess the political instability, despite the fact that I don't really like to see all the instability. I guess it does. I guess it's good for gold prices. It's not exactly why you want to see gold moving. I'd rather see it move for other reasons. But I think silver will, eventually the big money is going to wake up to silver, and starting to see it. And I think that silver will ultimately be the star and outperform gold. And I think people just need to be positioned right, whether that's your choice is physical or whether it's the miners. It's up to their people's own investment criteria, but definitely should have some exposure in silver. It's a very interesting commodity. I've called it the strategic metal. If the human race wants to electrify itself in the ways that we are talking about doing, we're going to need a lot more silver, and we're going to need much higher silver prices in order to incentivize the miners to mine the stuff, because we're just simply not mining enough silver today.
Well said. Thank you very much. Enjoyed this conversation. It was good to see you, Keith. And we want to thank everyone for listening today. Make sure you hit that like button on this video. Give us that triple digit silver comment right there down below. You can check out the First Majestic website, and we will see you on the next video.